The warship drifted quietly above the ruined world, its halls filled with shadows and silence. Liara walked down the corridor, her steps heavy. Every sound reminded her of the one voice she would never hear again. Her alien partner, Kale, was gone. He had been her shield, her strength, her heart, and now he was only a memory. The empty seat beside her in the combat shuttle burned into her soul like fire. The council had given her no time to mourn. They simply handed her a replacement, a human. She hated the thought. To her, humans were reckless, weak, and clumsy. They could not understand the bond her kind shared. They could never take Kale's place. When she entered the hangar, she saw him, Daniel, the human soldier. He stood waiting in full armor, his helmet tucked under his arm. His eyes were calm but hard. He looked at her with a small nod, a soldier's respect, but Liara did not nod back. She turned her head away. "You must be Liara," Daniel said quietly. His voice was steady, not arrogant, not proud. "I will be your partner now." Liara's jaw tightened. Partner. The word felt like poison. She almost spat back. "You will never be Kale." But she kept silent. Her anger was too raw, too sharp. She walked past him and climbed into the shuttle, leaving him to follow like an unwanted shadow. The squad commander gave orders as the shuttle engines roared. They were being sent to investigate ruins on the surface. Enemy forces had been spotted, drones and scavengers dangerous in packs. Liara gripped her weapon tightly. She would fight as she always did, but she swore she would not trust the human. Not with her back, not with her life. When the shuttle landed, the dust storm outside swallowed them. The ruins stretched like broken bones across the horizon. Walls blackened by fire, towers shattered, the smell of ash still lingering even after years. Liara's chest ached. Kale had died on a battlefield just like this. She stepped forward quickly, not waiting for Daniel. The squad moved through the ruins, shadows dancing in every corner. Liara's sharp alien eyes scanned the wreckage. She heard every echo, every scrape of metal. The silence was too deep, too dangerous. She raised her hand to signal the squad. But before she could, a burst of laser fire exploded from the rubble. Enemies swarmed, mechanical drones crawling out like insects. Their red eyes glowed in the storm. Weapons lit the sky. Liara ducked behind a broken pillar and returned fire. Her movements were sharp, practiced, deadly. She fought with skill, but the swarm was endless. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Daniel. He moved with the squad, but not like them. His style was different, fast and unpredictable. His human reflexes allowed him to dodge and shoot with surprising accuracy. Liara hated to admit it, but he was holding his ground. His weapon cut down drones before they could flank the squad. Still, she refused to look at him for more than a second. A blast rocked the ruins, throwing her off balance. The ground crumbled. Beneath her feet she fell, sliding down a slope of broken stone. Her weapon flew from her hands. The drones closed in, their red eyes flashing. Her claws reached for a blade at her belt, but it was too late. Then a shadow leapt over her. Daniel. He fired point blank, the blast ripping through the nearest drones. Sparks and broken metal rained around them. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to her feet with surprising strength. "Stay low," he shouted, pulling her behind cover. Liara's pride screamed at her. She wanted to rip her arm away, to tell him she needed no human's help. But the truth was bitter. Without him, she would have been dead in the dust. Her chest burned with rage and shame. The fight raged on until the last drone fell silent. The squad regrouped, panting, bruised, and shaken. Liara stood apart, her claws clenched. Daniel glanced at her once, his face calm. He did not expect thanks. He did not speak a word. He simply reloaded his weapon and prepared to move again. The squad commander gave a sharp nod. "Good work, soldier," he told Daniel. "You saved Liara's life." The words cut deeper than any blade. Saved her life. By a human. Her partner, Kale, had died, and now this stranger had stood in his place. She felt her throat tighten. Her anger grew heavier, and she swore in that moment she would never forgive him. But deep inside, a question stirred. A question she refused to face. If The human had not been there. Would she already be lying cold in the dust beside Kale's memory? The squad marched deeper into the ruins. The storm howled above, and Liara walked with her weapon tight in her hands. The empty seat of her partner still haunted her. But now another shadow followed her every step. Daniel, the human she swore to hate, yet who had already begun to break the walls she built. The storm had not calmed. Dust swept across the ruins, painting the world in shades of gray. The squad moved carefully through the broken city, but the tension between Liara and Daniel was sharper than any blade. Liara walked ahead, her steps quick and angry. She did not look back at the human following behind. Every time she heard his boots crunching against the shattered stone, her chest tightened. He did not belong here. He was not Kale. He could never be Kale. When they reached the remains of an old tower, the squad paused to set up a temporary outpost. While others checked equipment, Daniel quietly cleaned his weapon. His movements were calm, almost mechanical. Liara watched him with narrowed eyes. "You fight like you don't care if you die," she said coldly. Her voice was sharp as ice. "Is that the human way, to run into fire without thinking?" Daniel lifted his head. His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "I fight to protect the squad," he replied simply. "If I fall, then at least someone else lives." Liara's claws dug into the stone wall beside her. "My partner died for me," she hissed. "And they think you can replace him? You are nothing like him. You are weak flesh and fragile bones. You don't understand what it means to fight as one." Daniel did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. "You're right," he said quietly. "I cannot be him. I won't try. But I can stand beside you. I can fight. I can bleed if I must. That's all I can give." His calmness only made her angrier. She wanted him to break, to show fear, to prove he was unworthy. But instead, his steady tone struck her like a blade. She turned away, refusing to answer. The silence was shattered by an explosion. The ground shook. Dust and fire burst from the ruins ahead. Enemy drones poured out, dozens of them. Their glowing eyes cut through the storm like red lightning. "Positions," the commander shouted. The squad scattered, returning fire. Blasts lit the ruins, drones leapt from walls and ceilings like predators. Liara charged forward, her weapon slicing through the air. Her fury drove her. Each drone that fell was another scream of defiance, another way to silence the human's presence behind her. But the swarm was endless. The drones adapted, moving faster, cutting off escape routes. Liara's sharp eyes saw it too late. 3 drones circling behind her. One dropped from above, claws extended. Before she could turn, Daniel was there. His rifle roared. The drone fell in sparks. He slammed his shoulder into the second. Knocking it aside, the third lunged, its blade arm raised. Daniel caught it with his own arm guard, sparks flying as the metal sliced into him. With a grunt, he shoved it back and finished it with a blast. Liara froze for a heartbeat. Her chest burned with rage, not at the enemy, but at him. He had saved her again. She snarled and cut down another drone. "Stay out of my fight," she shouted at him. "I don't need your help." Daniel's jaw tightened. For the first time, he snapped. "Back, you would be dead twice already if I stayed out." His voice was sharp, not calm anymore. "I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to be Kale. I'm here because the squad needs every fighter, even if you hate me." Liara's breath caught. His words stung like fire. For a moment, the storm, the battle, even the drones faded. All she saw was his eyes. Angry, tired, but unbroken. He had finally raised his voice, and it shook her more than the explosions around them. The squad pushed forward, the last drones falling in a storm of fire and steel. The ruins grew quiet again, smoke rising into the stormy sky. Soldiers checked their weapons, breathing hard. Liara stood apart, her chest rising and falling. Daniel leaned against a wall, blood seeping from a cut on his arm where the drone had sliced him. Yet he did not complain. He simply wrapped a band around the wound and prepared his rifle again. The commander approached Liara. "You fight well," he said. "But so does the human. You two must learn to fight as one, or this war will swallow you both. Liara said nothing. Her claws clenched around her weapon. Her mind raged. How dare the human speak to her like that? How dare he stand where Kale once stood? Yet beneath, the rage was something worse, something she could not admit. Daniel was not weak, he was not careless, he was not trying to be Kale. He was simply fighting with all he had. And that truth cut deeper than any blade. As the squad moved again, Liara walked in silence, her eyes fixed forward. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not forget the moment Daniel shouted at her. Not with fear, not with pride, but with raw truth. And for the first time she realized she did not know what she hated more, his presence or the fact that he was proving her wrong. The storm roared above, the ruins stretched before them, and the fragile thread between alien and human pulled tighter, ready to snap or to bind them in ways neither expected. The ruins stretched endlessly, black stone against a storm-filled sky. The squad moved in silence, their armor scratched, their weapons heavy. But the silence between Liara and Daniel was heavier still. Every step she took, she felt his shadow. Following steady and unshaken, it gnawed at her. It twisted her grief into fury. When they stopped to rest inside a half-broken shelter, Liara finally snapped. She could not hold the fire inside her chest any longer. She turned on Daniel, her claws flashing as they pointed at him. You walk beside me as if you belong here, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. But you do not. You will never belong. My partner died for me, and they sent you to fill his seat like some tool. You wear his place like stolen armor. And I hate you for it. The squad froze. Soldiers looked away, pretending not to hear. But the tension filled the air like thunder. Daniel sat quietly at first, his back against the stone wall, his rifle across his knees. He did not answer. Not right away. He let her words strike him like arrows. His jaw tightened, his chest rising and falling. Finally, he lifted his eyes to meet hers. I never asked for his place, Daniel said, his voice calm but edged with steel. I never asked to sit in that seat. I never asked to fight beside you. The council sent me, not to replace him, but to stand with you. And whether you hate me or not, I will stand, I will fight, and I will bleed if I must. Liara's breath caught, but her anger surged again. You don't understand, she snarled. Kale was my bond. He was more than a soldier. He was part of me. And then you came, human, walking in his shadow, breathing his air, as if you could ever stand where he stood. Daniel's eyes flashed. For the first time, his patience cracked. He rose to his feet. His voice no longer calm but sharp, raw. I cannot be Kale. I don't want to be Kale. But I am here now, and if you're too blinded by hate to see that, then maybe it's not me who doesn't understand. Maybe it's you. The words cut deeper than Liara expected. Her claws trembled. For a moment, she almost struck him. But before she could move, a distant rumble echoed through the ruins. The ground shook, dust falling from the broken ceiling above. The squad scrambled to their feet, weapons raised. A low, metallic screech echoed, growing louder. From the shattered street outside, enemy drones swarmed again. More than before, hundreds of red eyes glowing in the storm. Positions, the commander shouted. The squad fired, lasers lighting the darkness. The drones surged like a flood, crawling over walls, smashing through rubble. Liara leapt into the fray, her blade slicing through metal. Her fury drove her movements, but the swarm pushed harder, cutting them off from escape. Explosions shook the ground, dust blinded her sight. In the chaos, she heard a scream. One of her squad mates went down, pinned beneath a drone. Liara moved to help, but another wave surged between her and the fallen soldier. Daniel was already there, his rifle blazing. He cut through the drones and dragged the soldier to safety. The blast from another explosion threw him against a wall. His armor cracked, but he forced himself up, still firing. Liara snarled, slashing through the machines. But her chest twisted with something she didn't want to name. Every time she tried to prove he was weak, he only proved stronger. The battle raged until the last drone fell, broken and sparking on the ground. The squad, regrouped, breathing hard, weapons smoking. The ruins were quiet again, but the storm still roared above. Daniel leaned against the wall, blood trickling down his forehead. His breaths were sharp, his eyes tired but unbroken. Liara stared at him, her chest heaving. Her anger burned, but beneath it something worse stirred. Guilt. He was not Kale, but he was fighting with everything he had, and she hated herself for seeing it. "You risked yourself again," she said bitterly, her voice shaking. "Why? You don't even know us. You don't even know me. Why throw yourself into the fire?" Daniel's gaze locked on hers. His voice was low but steady. "Because it's my duty. Because every soldier here matters. Because if I can keep even one of you alive, then it's worth it." Liara's claws dug into her palms. She wanted to scream. She wanted to deny every word. But her chest ached with a truth she could not kill. Kyle had died to protect her. And now Daniel, the human she swore to hate, was walking the same path. The commander called for rest. The squad settled in the ruins again, but Liara could not rest. She sat apart, her eyes locked on the storm outside, her heart torn between rage, grief, and something she refused to name. And Daniel, sitting across the broken firelight, did not look at her again. He simply cleaned his weapon in silence, as if preparing for another storm. Liara closed her eyes, but her claws still trembled. For the first time, she felt the walls inside her beginning to crack, and she feared what might happen when they finally broke. The ruins ended at the edge of a vast desert. The sand stretched in all directions, glowing red beneath the storm-filled sky. The squad moved carefully, every step heavy. The silence was not peace, it was warning. Liara walked ahead, her eyes scanning the shifting dunes. She felt danger in the air. Her instincts sharpened, every muscle in her body told her something was coming. The squad commander ordered everyone to keep weapons ready. Daniel walked near the rear, his armor dented from the last battle. His movements were slower, his breathing rough, but his grip on his rifle was steady. Liara tried not to look at him. She told herself she didn't care if he stumbled. She told herself she still hated him. Yet her ears caught every sound he made, as if part of her refused to ignore him. The storm above cracked with sudden lightning, and then came the sound. A shrill whine that grew louder and louder. The sand trembled. A shadow crossed the desert. Sky war drones, dozens of them, black as night, their engines screaming. They descended in formation, weapons glowing red. "Contact," the commander shouted. Blasts rained from the sky. The desert erupted in fire. Sand turned to glass. The squad scattered, dodging between broken rocks jutting from the dunes. Liara leapt behind cover, firing back. Her blade caught the nearest drone, slicing it in half. Sparks rained across the sand, but the sky was burning. The drone swarmed in every direction, firing beams that cut through stone and flesh alike. Soldiers screamed, the air filled with smoke and dust. Liara fought with fury, cutting down one drone after another. Her claws burned, her chest heaved. Still, they kept coming. For every drone that fell, 3 more appeared. In the chaos, she heard Daniel's voice. "Left flank, they're circling." She turned just in time to see a swarm rushing from the dunes. Their glowing eyes locked on her squad. She fired, slashed, fought like a storm, but she could not stop them all. Then the sky itself split. A massive explosion tore across the battlefield. The bunker wall behind her cracked and collapsed. A wave of fire and debris roared toward her. Liara froze for a fraction of a second. The blast was too close, too strong. She would not survive it. But then Daniel was there. He threw himself forward, slamming into her. His body shielded hers as the explosion struck. The world turned to fire and dust. The force threw them both into the sand. Rocks crashed around them. The roar of destruction filled her ears. For a moment, everything was silence. Her vision blurred. She felt heat, pressure, weight. And then she realized Daniel's body was over hers. His armor cracked, his back scorched. Yet his arms still held the shield position, protecting her from the falling wreckage. "Daniel," she gasped, her claws pressed against his shoulder. "Move, you'll die." His voice came low, ragged. Not yet. He pushed himself up, blood running down his face, his breathing shallow. He still raised his rifle and fired at the drones charging through the smoke. Liara stared at him, her chest twisting in ways she didn't understand. She had told herself he was nothing. She had told herself he was weak, yet here he was, burning, bleeding, and still standing between her and death. Her claws tightened around her blade. For the first time, she felt fear, not for herself, but for him. The battle raged on. The squad fought desperately. Drones circled overhead, firing relentlessly. Liara leapt forward, fighting beside Daniel. Her blade and his rifle moved in rhythm without thought. He covered her when she struck. She shielded him when he faltered. It was a bond born in fire, unspoken but undeniable. An enemy drone dropped from the sky, its glowing blade aimed at Daniel's chest. Without hesitation, Liara lunged. Her claws ripped the machine apart before it could strike him. Sparks burst across her face. She hissed, standing over him. For a heartbeat, their eyes met in the smoke. Her chest burned, not with hate, not with rage, but something she could not name. When the last drone fell, the battlefield was silent except for the wind. The squad regrouped, fewer in number, their armor cracked. The commander gave orders, but Liara barely heard them. Her eyes were on Daniel. He leaned against a rock, his breaths sharp, blood dripping. Down his arm, she moved closer, kneeling beside him. Her claws trembled as she touched the scorched metal of his armor. "Why?" she whispered, her voice broke. "Why throw yourself into fire for me?" Daniel's tired eyes met hers. His voice was soft. "Because you matter. Because Kale mattered. Because this squad matters. That's enough." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue. She wanted to push him away, but the words would not come. For the first time since Kale's death, she felt something crack inside her armor. Not anger, not hate, but the weight of grief shifting into something else. Liara looked at him, really looked. And she realized the truth she had been trying to deny. Daniel was not Kale. He would never be Kale. But he was not her enemy either. He was her shield, her partner in the fire. The storm above rumbled, the desert burned with the memory of battle. And Liara, for the first time, felt fear not of losing Kale again, but of losing this human who refused to let her die. The desert was quiet after the battle. Only the wind howled through the broken dunes, carrying the smell of smoke and scorched metal. The squad had lost many. Their commander ordered a retreat to an abandoned shelter carved into the rock. There, the survivors gathered, bruised, bleeding, and silent. Liara sat in the corner of the shelter, her claws shaking as she cleaned her weapon, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. Daniel sat across the firelight, his armor cracked, his skin scorched. His breath came sharp and uneven. Blood soaked through a bandage on his side. He had saved her again, and again she could not explain why it twisted her chest so painfully. She should have been grateful. Instead, she felt guilt, raw and heavy. Finally, she stood and walked to him. Her claws hovered awkwardly before she spoke. "You are injured," she said stiffly. "Let me see." Daniel looked up, his tired eyes meeting hers. He gave a small nod, saying nothing. He set his rifle aside and allowed her to peel back the broken armor plate. The wound beneath was deep, a jagged cut along his ribs. Blood seeped. Through his human body was fragile. Too fragile, she thought. Yet he had stood against fire and storm to shield her. She cleaned the wound with careful claws. Her hands shook, though she tried to hide it. The scent of blood brought back memories. Kale's blood, Kale's body in her arms. The moment she lost everything, her throat closed. "You should have let me take the blast," she muttered, her voice low. "It should have been me." Daniel's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, weak but real. "I don't believe in should," he whispered. "I was there. You weren't ready. That's all there is." Her claws froze. Her eyes snapped to his. "Don't speak as if it means nothing." She hissed. "Kale died because I wasn't ready, and now you—" Her words broke. Her chest tightened as if chains wrapped around her heart. Daniel's gaze softened. "I know," he said quietly. I know he mattered. I know what he was. To you, and I'm sorry. Not for being here, but for failing him too. Liara blinked, her anger faltering. Failing him? She repeated, confused. Daniel leaned back, his face pale in the firelight. I was on another front when Kale's squad fell. We got there too late. I carried his body to the medics. I thought, if I had been faster, maybe he'd still be alive. Liara's chest went cold. Her claws trembled. The image of Kale's lifeless body returned, the silence of that moment. She had never asked who carried him back. She had never wanted to know. And now she saw the human's face in that memory. You, she whispered, her voice breaking. You were the one. Daniel nodded once. His eyes lowered. Yes, I was the one. I couldn't save him. I couldn't save your bond. All I could do was carry him home. Liara's claws clenched so hard they cut into her palm. Her rage cracked, spilling into sorrow. She turned her head, not wanting him to see the tears burning her eyes. For years she had held her hate like a shield. Hate for the council, for fate, for humans. But now she realized her hate for Daniel had been easier than facing the truth. She had hated him because she had hated herself. She pressed the bandage firmly against his wound, her claws steadier now. You are a fool, she whispered, her voice soft. But a fool who does not give up. Daniel gave a faint laugh that turned into a cough. Maybe that's all I am, he said. But I'll keep standing as long as I can, even if you never forgive me. Her throat ached. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to tell him she would never forgive him. But the words would not come. Instead, silence stretched between them, a silence filled not with hate but with something heavier. The squad settled into uneasy rest. The fire burned low. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, Liara sat close to Daniel, watching his breath steady as sleep finally took him. Her claws lingered near his hand but never touched. Her heart pulled in two directions, toward the memory of Kyle and toward the human who refused to let her die. For the first time since Kale's death, she whispered into the fire, so soft only she could hear, I don't hate you. Not anymore. The words scared her, but they were true. The storm outside raged, but inside the shelter, a new truth began to take root, fragile and unwanted, yet real. The storm outside the shelter did not end. It grew worse. Lightning cracked across the desert sky, and the wind screamed like 1,000 voices. The squad was restless. Their numbers were fewer, their strength almost gone. At dawn, a scout stumbled back into the cave. His armor was shattered, blood running down his face. They took them, he gasped. The raiders. The rest of our squad, they've been captured. The commander cursed. The alien raiders had struck in the night, dragging half their soldiers into the dunes. If they were not saved soon, they would be executed or sold as slaves. Liara's claws dug into the stone wall. Her chest burned with fury. She looked at Daniel, who sat propped against the cave wall, still weak from his wound. He was pale, his breaths uneven, yet his eyes met hers with steady fire. We have to go, she said firmly. We will not leave them. The commander shook his head. With what strength? Half of us are wounded, and the rest cannot fight a full raider camp. Liara stepped forward, her voice sharp. Then I will go. Daniel coughed but pushed himself upright. His hand gripped his rifle even as his arm trembled. Not alone, he said. I'll come. She spun on him, anger flashing in her eyes. You can barely stand your wound. He cut her off, his voice harsh. I don't care. They're my squad too. I won't stay behind while they die. For a moment, Liara's heart twisted. She saw the stubborn fire in his eyes, the same fire Kale once carried. She wanted to order him to stay, to live. But she knew he would follow no matter what. The squad prepared what little they had. 2 soldiers stayed behind with the wounded. The rest, led by Liara and Daniel, slipped into the desert storm. The raider camp lay hidden in the canyons, black fires burning in the night. Alien banners fluttered, strange symbols painted in blood. Across the rocks, prison cages glowed with energy fields, and inside, their captured soldiers lay beaten and chained. Liara crouched on a ridge, her sharp eyes scanning the guards, her claws tightened around her blade. "We strike fast," she whispered. "Break the cages, free the squad, and escape before reinforcements arrive." Daniel knelt beside her, his rifle ready. His voice was low. "I'll take the first guards. You focus on the cages." She looked at him, his face pale in the firelight, his body still weak, and yet his eyes burned steady. She almost told him no, but instead, she nodded. The squad moved, shadows in the storm. Daniel fired the first shot. A guard fell before he even screamed. Chaos exploded, blasts lit the canyon walls, raiders roared, charging from their tents. Liara leapt into the fire, her blade cutting through chains and machines alike. The captured soldiers cried out as their cages shattered. She tore them free, pushing them toward escape. Behind her, Daniel fought like a man possessed. His wound bled, his body staggered. But his rifle never faltered. He covered her with deadly precision. Every raider who tried to reach her fell to his fire. But the raiders were too many. A brute twice Liara's size slammed into her, knocking her against the cage wall. Sparks burned her skin. She snarled, struggling, but the brute's grip crushed her. Then Daniel was there, his rifle empty. He dropped it and tackled the brute with nothing but raw strength. The alien roared, slamming him to the ground. Daniel's head struck stone, blood spraying. Still, he dragged his blade across the brute's chest, cutting deep. Liara's chest froze in. "Terror, Daniel," she shouted. She slashed the brute's throat and pulled Daniel up. His body was limp, blood running down his face. He tried to speak, but only a broken breath escaped. The commander's voice roared from across the canyon. "The cages are open. Retreat!" The squad fled into the storm, carrying the freed soldiers. Liara staggered under Daniel's weight, his arm heavy across her shoulders. Every step was agony, the raiders screaming behind them, fire burning at their backs. "Leave him," a soldier shouted. "He's too heavy, we'll all die." Liara snarled, her eyes blazing. "I will not leave him." She dragged him through the sand, her claws digging deep. The storm swallowed them, lightning flashing overhead. Every breath was a battle, every step a war, but she refused to let go. Finally, the squad reached the shelter of a canyon wall. The raiders lost them in the storm. The survivors collapsed, gasping, bleeding, alive. Liara lowered Daniel gently to the ground. His face was pale, his breath shallow, her claws pressed against his wound. Desperate, her chest shook. She whispered fiercely, "You will not die. Not like Kale. I will not lose another partner." Her words trembled with more than anger. They trembled with truth. For the first time, she admitted what she had fought to deny. Daniel was no longer just a human she hated. He was her partner, her shield, her bond in fire. The squad huddled in the storm, battered but alive, and Liara sat beside Daniel, her claws never leaving his hand, her eyes locked on his, face praying that his stubborn fire would not go out. 3 days passed. The storm faded. The squad limped across rocky plains, carrying the injured and broken back to the forward base. Liara walked beside a hover stretcher, her claws clenched, her eyes never leaving the unconscious man on it. Daniel. He hadn't woken since the rescue. His wound had worsened and his body burned with fever. Medics rushed him away when they reached the base. Her claws were stained with dried blood, not all of it his. And though she had stood in fire and faced death more times than she could count, nothing made her heart pound like watching those medics carry him out of sight. She had fought to save him, not because it was duty, but because something had changed inside her, something she didn't understand and could no longer ignore. The council summoned her the next day. The chamber was cold and silent, high-ranking aliens and humans sitting in a circle. "You disobeyed orders," said one counselor. "You risked the lives of an entire squad for a few captured soldiers. You dragged an injured human through enemy fire," another added. "Why not leave him and complete the mission?" Liara stood tall. Her claws didn't tremble this time. "Because he would not have left me," she said firmly. Her voice echoed across the room. "Because he is not just a replacement, he is my partner." The room fell silent. Even the counselor who had called Daniel fragile and unfit said nothing. Liara continued, her voice sharper now. "He was never meant to replace Kale. But he earned his place beside me, not with words but with blood. One counselor leaned forward, his eyes cold. Do you claim a combat bond with this human? Liara paused. Her chest tightened. Her claws curled slightly. Yes, she said. I claim him as my combat bond. Gasps filled the chamber. A bond between alien and human was rare, almost unheard of. And if he does not wake? Asked another counselor. What then? Liara looked them in the eyes. Then I will wait. She said, I will not choose another. They dismissed her in silence, but no one challenged her again. She returned to the medical wing. Daniel lay on the bed, his face pale, his breathing shallow. Machines hummed softly around him. Liara sat beside him, her claws resting gently on the bed's edge. She spoke softly, just for him. You never asked for this. You never demanded loyalty. You just gave it, over and over again. And I hated you for making me feel again. She reached up and touched his human hand. But now I don't want to forget, I don't want to shut it out, I want you to open your eyes, I want you to look at me the way you did when the fire was falling and you refused to run. Hours passed. The room dimmed. Then a cough. Low and painful. Her head snapped up. Daniel's eyes blinked open, slow, tired, but alive. You stayed? He whispered. Liara leaned closer. Of course I stayed, she said. I told the council, you are my bond, so you'd better not die and make me look like a fool. Daniel gave a weak smile. Don't plan to, he murmured. Too stubborn to quit. She almost smiled, but her claws gripped his hand tightly. Good, she whispered, because I'm not letting you go. In the days that followed, Daniel recovered slowly. The squad visited, offering nods of respect, especially those he had helped save. Even the commander gave a rare salute. One morning, as Daniel sat upright with a blanket across his lap, Liara entered wearing full armor. Her posture was straight, her claws clean. She tossed something at him, his rifle polished and repaired. Ready to return? She asked. Daniel smiled and caught it. With you? She tilted her head slightly. With me. He nodded. Always. They walked out of the medical wing together, step by step. As they passed through the base, soldiers stared, not with confusion anymore, but with quiet respect. Some whispered of the alien and the human who now fought as one. A bond not born by order, but through fire, pain, and survival. And though the war still raged, though more missions waited, Liara knew this time. The seat beside her was not empty. It was filled by someone who had earned it, not by bloodline or command, but by loyalty and courage. The human who refused to let her fall, and the alien who finally opened her heart again. Together they walked into the fire once more, not as strangers, not as replacements, but as partners, unbroken, unshaken, and united by choice.